जल्दी ना करो। अरे टेंशन ना लो। वेट 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 वेट, फ्लो में है हम सेट। थोड़ा चिल कर लो, प्लीज वेट।
कभी दौड़ेंगे, कभी रुक जाएंगे,
कभी ढूंढेंगे, कभी खो जाएंगे। कभी रूठेंगे, कभी खिल जाएंगे।
कभी लड़ पड़ेंगे, कभी जुड़ जाएंगे, कभी उलझेंगे, कभी सुलझाएंगे,
कभी हारेंगे, कभी जीत जाएंगे।
यही है बचपन का रन रेट। क्योंकि बचपन इज ग्रेट।
हमें रहने दो, पूरा पीने दो।
खोलो बचपन के सब गेट। थोड़ा चिल कर लो प्लीज वेट, क्योंकि बचपन इज ग्रेट। थोड़ा चिल कर लो प्लीज वेट, क्योंकि बचपन इज ग्रेट।
पापा मम्मी दादा दादी नाना नानी भैया दीदी कजन्स कॉलोनी टॉमी रानी गर्मी ठंडी खेल कहानी सबने अपने पेड़ पहाड़ खाना गाना लेटर्स नंबर्स। दुनिया हमारी फुल प्लेट। क्योंकि बचपन इज ग्रेट।
यही ठीक है, यही सीख है, बचपन ही मेरी स्लेट। थोड़ा चिल कर लो प्लीज वेट, क्योंकि बचपन इज ग्रेट। थोड़ा चिल कर लो प्लीज वेट, क्योंकि बचपन इज ग्रेट। थोड़ा चिल कर लो प्लीज वेट, क्योंकि बचपन इज ग्रेट।
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bhavna. Bachpan Manao celebrates the first 8 years of life as a time of joyful learning, play, and growth, while also creating spaces for important conversations that help us reimagine what childhood can and should be. This year, Bachpan Manao is focusing on actions to celebrate childhood through 8 wonders: play, social bonding, all round skills, education, creativity, stories, nature, and quiet time. Today's masterclass on small spaces, giant impact truly brings alive the ethos of Bachpan is Great by showing us how to reimagine anganwadis and creches as playful, interactive, and equitable spaces for our youngest citizens. It will be hosted by Swati Janu, who is an architect based in Delhi and has been working for inclusion in the built environment through grassroots engagement and policy advocacy. She's the founder of interdisciplinary studio Social Design Collaborative that works on ground with under-resourced communities to create civic infrastructure such as schools, daycares, and community spaces. We often feel that our cities are failing our youngest. Streets are unsafe, play areas are shrinking, and there are fewer and fewer spaces being built for the children. In today's Bachpan Manao masterclass, Swati Janu will focus on simple design elements and practical strategies to make anganwadis, creches child-friendly, interactive, and accessible. It will demonstrate how play and learning can be woven into every square inch of even the smallest retrofitted room using easy, low-cost design interventions. Drawing from real world projects, it will examine how participatory design processes, cross sector partnerships, and community engagement can help create early childhood spaces that are responsive, equitable, and built to last. Thank you, Swati, and over to you.
Thank you, Bhavna. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Really happy to see some familiar faces, some familiar names. And I think before we begin, it would be really helpful to know what are the backgrounds of everyone. Because the conversation is on design, I'm curious to see how many designers we have with us. So maybe by a show of hands, or maybe using the react button, heart or thumbs up. If all the architects, designers, or people who identify as designers can raise their hands, or maybe actually react, use the react button because I don't think I can see everyone. I'm also going to change my view. Okay, so very few, I think. Okay, I guess about 10 to 15 out of the 60 plus crowd that we have right now. Okay, thank you for that. And can I now, by a show of reactions, the emojis, understand how many people identify not as designers? You don't see yourself as a designer. Come on, some reaction, some participation. Yeah, okay. I'm beginning to see another, I think, similar sort of a number, about 10 to 15. So what about the in-betweens? I think people are settling down. Okay, more reactions now. Okay, one last question perhaps. I would like to understand, two more questions. How many people here are from the education background? You are into teaching or learning, in learning spaces. Okay. Okay, that's, I think, the largest majority so far, easily 20 to 30 people. Thanks for that. Okay, and my last question is, how many people are working with the government, or either as a part of the government or liaising with the government through direct engagement with the government? New reactions? Are these new reactions? Because that's also a really large number. Yeah, Varun, is that like the old reactions? Do they stay on? I'm guessing these are new reactions. Okay, wow. So that's, I think, the 70 plus now that we are. I'm seeing that it's a good mix of designers and people from an education background and people who are working in, I'm guessing, NGOs, because the rest of you, I'm guessing, are from the social sector and from different government departments. So this is a great group to be talking to. I'm sure you know a lot of what I already am here to talk about, but I hope I can add to that. So before we begin, I would like to request the team, the organizing team, to share a short video, a 3-minute video that talks about the impact a very small space can have.
एक छोटे से क्रैश की डिज़ाइन बच्चों की पढ़ाई और उनके विकास पर क्या असर डाल सकती है? 2025 में सेवा दिल्ली के एक सेंटर में आर्किटेक्चर स्टूडियो सोशल डिज़ाइन कोलैबोरेटिव ने एक ऐसी जगह तैयार की जहां कमरे का हर कोना, दीवार, फर्श, दरवाज़ा बच्चों के सीखने का हिस्सा बन गया। 1 साल बाद हमने बच्चों के परिवारों से पूछा कि इस क्रैश से उनके और उनके बच्चों की ज़िंदगी में क्या फ़र्क आया है।
मेरा जो आर्यन था वो डिसेबल था, आंखों से दिखता नहीं था उसको, और उसकी थेरेपी वगैरह भी थी। मैं सिंगल मदर, मैं या तो जॉब कर सकती थी या तो बच्चे की थेरेपी वगैरह कराने के लिए हॉस्पिटल लेके जा सकती थी। एक ही चीज़ कर सकती थी मैं। टच करना सिखाते थे, शेप्स लगाना, उसके बाद फिर वो सर्कल्स वाले में जो रिंग थी वो सारी चीज़ें करना। फिर 1 से 1.5 महीने के अंदर ही मैंने उसमें चेंजेस देखी, बाबू में भी और क्रच में भी देखा कि जो जो इसकी थेरेपी के लिए होना चाहिए था वो सब कुछ वहाँ पे अवेलेबल। अब मेरा बच्चा बहुत ठीक है, देख लेता है, सब चीज़ समझता है, जानता है, पहचानता है। लगता ही नहीं कि बच्चा ऐसी दिक्कत थी भी उसे।
एक का नाम है मोहम्मद अरमान, एक का नाम है मोहम्मद फरमान, जो कि उसको क्रैच में बल्लू के
गूंगे की वजह से सब बोलते थे, लेकिन वो बोलना सीखा। और दूसरी बात ये, जब वो पैदा हुआ था ना, वो जब से ही बीमार था, लेकिन अब 1 साल से उसके अंदर बहुत बदलाव है। तो थोड़ा हम लोग घर में भी बचत खाता हो जा रहा है हमारा। थोड़ा जहाँ 2 सूट सिलती थी वहाँ 1 सूट फालतू सिल रही हो, जहाँ ये 20-30 पैकेट बनाती थी वहाँ 50-60 बना ले रही हो।
जो कि डॉक्टर ने बिल्कुल ही मना कर दिया था, नॉर्मल नहीं है। डॉक्टर बोले थे कि पहले इसको सिखाओ ये चीज़ें, या ये देख तो पाएगा नहीं पर ये फील कर सकता है। बट अब ये देख भी पाता है, इसका कलर ही फेवरेट है, अपने पसंद के अब ये कपड़े तक निकाल के पहनता है। कि मुझे ब्लू कलर का पहनना है, मुझे येलो कलर का। बहुत सारी चेंजेस आई है।
हमें यह समझ आया कि दिव्यांगता हमेशा अंदरूनी कमी नहीं होती। कई बार वह एक रुकावट बन जाती है अगर हम उसे समय पर समझ ना पाएं, पकड़ ना पाएं। जब बच्चे छोटे होते हैं तो वह कच्चे घड़ों की तरह होते हैं। अगर उनकी पढ़ाई की जगह ऐसी हो जो उन्हें प्रोत्साहित कर सकें, उनकी इंद्रियों को मजबूत कर सके, तो हम एक ऐसा समावेशी क्रैश बना सकते हैं जो बच्चों की जिंदगी में बहुत बड़ा बदलाव ला सकता है।
Thank you for that. So this was a project that we did with the NGO Seva Bharat, and this was in collaboration with Seva Delhi in Delhi. And I think this was an important beginning because I wanted to talk about the impact that a small creche or an anganwadi can have, not just on the development of children, but also the entire families. You can see the impact it had on the livelihoods of the mothers here. And I think that sort of a ripple effect of a small space, a small room, is very important to understand. And now within that room, what can we do? That's something now I want to discuss with you. Let me just share my screen. Also, when we designed and retrofitted this creche in a building in Jahangirpuri in Delhi with the Seva Delhi and Seva Bharat, at that point, we were not expecting the kind of impact it could have on disability inclusion. We had designed a creche wanting to maximize the potential a small space can offer, but then to see that it also helped mitigate disabilities, I think really was a surprise for me, and that's why I wanted to bring this up. And I think this is something all the educationists, people who are already teachers in such spaces might know. But these are the early development years. These are the formative years for children. And if the learning environment can be stimulating enough, then it can really help in identifying development challenges, and B, help in addressing them through different elements that I'm going to now discuss with you. Okay, so we like making models. You're going to see a lot of models in this presentation. For us, it's a great medium of conversation when it comes to design discussions. And here we are talking about a simple pop-up creche, which is a very small space that you saw in the video. And these are the two rooms that you might have seen glimpses of in the video. This one is the care room where kids sleep, and also it has a nappy changing station. It is also called a creche table. And this is the activity room where you saw the different interactive elements. From outside, this is what it looks like. This is in Seva's community center. It's an SSK, Seva Shakti Kendra. They have a lot of such centers across the country. And here they decided to also couple up the convergence center with also a creche, which is a private creche at a very subsidized rate of less than 500 rupees a month. And you can see these simple elements outside the doors, the safety doors for the children, using these beads that many of you might be familiar with, which are what we call Bala elements, developed by Kabir Bajpai and his organization Vinyasa. And this is what the activity room looks like from inside. So you can see it's a very small space. It's about 10 feet by 10 feet, approximately 3 meters by 3 meters. And the different elements here, I'm going to go through one by one. But before that, I just want to bring to your attention how it has been designed at two levels. So there is a level at the height of the child, and then there is a level at the height of the adult. So the many things that you want should be out of the reach of children. For example, files, attendance registers, and the many things you do want should be accessible to the children, so that they are able to take out their own books, take out their own toys. And that is the intention here. So you can see this line at a height of 3 feet, but can also be a bit less, 2.5 feet. I'm going to throw in a few technical details because, as an architect, I think that just keeps happening. The second thing here I want to point out is, again, a very simple tool is having blackboards at children's height. Usually it's for teachers, and just providing a blackboard for children to draw on doodle on is so important, especially if you can just have these dots where they can connect them. Again, this is a Bala element, and you can see my children are also trying to reach over the height, which is the height which has been designed for them. Another element that I think would be a very good idea to create are bookshelves for children. So if there can be some picture books which are facing the children and they can decide what they want to read. There are, I think, books of different sizes. If you're a teacher, you might know this already. You can decide what you want to showcase different days of the week. And here, I think self-learning is a very important factor for creating independence in the children's mind, but also it really frees up the teacher's workload. You can see the bala grills, the beads, the abacus style beads, which are in the door here. In other cases, they can also be woven into the window grills. And in some cases, we just have very simple safety doors. So to allow a child to just walk freely, roam freely in however big a space is possible, it's very important to have these little doors wherever possible. And then what are the other stimulating elements that one can think of? So here we have created an interactive board, which is a mixture of what we call busy board. For example, these shapes. And the very simple task of trying to fit a pentagon in a pentagonal shape, or fitting a star in the star sort of a depression, a circle in a circle. These things are great for children's motor development. And just going back a bit more, this element, for example, is for children to trace their fingers in different size grooves. You'll see as soon as there's a line, if there is a line on the floor, if there is some sort of a track somewhere, a line on the wall, children will always trace it. It's very intuitive for children to try and play with different sorts of tracks, different sort of lines. And this is something we try to do here with the help of a carpenter. And then a third element here is very simply, what are the different sort of tactile elements you can think of? Let's say fur, grass. This is what you use for dusting in your house. This is the juna for for washing utensils, and different either kinds of leather or any other material you have lying around. Either you can put this up formally as we have done, or you can just put it up in embroidery hoops, जिस पे सिलाई करते हैं उसमें आपने अलग-अलग material लगा दिए, and then you can keep changing it every few weeks as and when it gets dirty, or you want to bring in a new element. And another element I wanted to also talk about is a mirror. It's a very simple thing. A mirror at a child height can make a huge difference in their learning. Specifically in this space, what had happened is that a child was he was coming from a home where both his parents were deaf and mute, and he also hadn't started speaking. And so everyone assumed that maybe he was also deaf and mute. But as he started coming to the creche, one is because of the peer learning, and secondly also because every day he would come and look at himself in the mirror, and he tried to form the words that other kids were forming, and he would try and pronounce them, enunciate them, form his mouth, move his mouth in those ways where he was always looking at himself, and over time he started speaking. So he wasn't deaf and mute, but maybe because of his home environment, there was a certain way that he was carrying himself about, and that changed because of a very simple element, which is a mirror at the child height. And then finally, what are the different ways that very, very young kids, 3 to 6 year olds, can themselves learn to pick up their things, to take out their favorite book, take out their toys, and then also learn to pack it up, to put it back. And I think these are the different design ideas that we can do in a very simple way to transform a very small space. So these design strategies we have been able to take forward because they were then adapted to the first creche come Anganwadi, which was designed in a government school in New Ashok Nagar. And this was just a few months ago in September last year. It was inaugurated by the Chief Minister of Delhi, by the Union Minister, and because it was the first such center in Delhi as a pilot project, now it has been adapted to 10 other centers by the NGO Impact Guru Foundation. And next, the idea is to scale it up 50 times. So this is what some parts of what the center looks like, slightly different color scheme here. And from these very simple ideas, I wanted to now move to talking about how you could design your own space. Because I feel that all of us are designers in our own right, even if you're not technically trained as an architect or a designer, you are constantly, intuitively reordering, shaping, reorganizing your space on a daily basis. So what we decided to do is we put our heads together with Seva, and Seva is a national NGO. They work in states across the country, and what they wanted to do is help create more creches, especially in rural Bihar, because they have a large presence there, and also because there is a huge need for early childcare and education. And the idea that they came up with is something they call carepreneurs, which means that they are training women to run creches out of their own houses. And so they wanted to do this in 150 homes in Gaya and Katihar. And so we started working together on how can we communicate these very simple design strategies, and how can people become the architect of their own creches. And so we put together this brochure, and I'm going to take you through it, the different steps in it. But before that, I want to say that once I went there to understand how people are already building, I realized that everyone is already an architect in their own right. And I will tell you what I mean by that. And the way they were using then this brochure, which opens up into a sort of a flyer, and then they started making a plan of their creche using very simple elements that they were tracing out. This is what it looks like. But first, I wanted to show you these visuals of the way they make their own houses. And these are mostly women who are building their own houses, their own kitchens using mud and bamboo. This, for example, I don't know how many of you can identify the structure. I don't know. I don't know if I want to interrupt the flow of the presentation, but I'm just going to give the answer, or maybe just quickly I can. Does anyone want to type into the chat box and tell me, what do you think the structure is for? Maybe Bhavna, you can read out a few responses so I don't have to stop my screen. Yeah, any guesses for what the structure is? What is it used for? Oh, I can see the chat. Chicken coop. Okay, yes, very close, very close. Stove, no. Food storage, no, but good ideas, all of them. Okay, so actually it's for yes, birds, but specifically bottle holder, little homes for little animals, little birds. So actually, it's for pigeons. But I think a chicken coop is also a good idea. But I think the holes are really small in this. So you can see that actually it works better for pigeons. And these little homes, these bigger homes, everything is being sculpted by hand. These are handmade homes. What I really loved are these shelves in the kitchen. You can see these shelves are so thin, and this is in mud. So it has a bit of it has bamboo slats with mud on it. And it's a really beautiful space. Similarly, this one you might know. Have you guys seen Gharonda? In Bihar, it's very common. People make these tiny homes, just before Diwali. They're called Gharondas. And I've seen the most beautiful, the most brilliantly designed Gharondas. I've seen 5-story. यहाँ पे तो 2 मंजिल है ना, और सीढ़ियाँ भी हैं. But I've seen like 5 floors of Gharondas, which are all like this miniature, sort of homes. And यहाँ पे देख सकते हो वो staircase ऊपर आ रहा है और cutout भी है. So this has been like well thought of. In terms of circulation as well. This is a temple. The space that you see is a temple. And on the right side, you can see another very beautiful home which has been built by a woman. So I realized that there's not much that we need to, tell them. And the idea was to think together. And very quickly, the different elements that I showed you, the very simple elements, they were able to translate, to adapt themselves in the building material that they use. So what we got done, by CNC cutting those shapes and those grooves in MDF, in ply, they have sculpted by their own hands in mud. एंड यू कैन सी हियर वेरी सिंपल थिंग्स लाइक टिफिन का डब्बा, उसको घुमा घुमा के आपने सर्कल बना लिया, और चीजों से आपने और शेप्स बना लिए. इन्होंने खुद का ही डिजाइन बना लिया कि मैं ग्रूव नहीं बनाऊंगी, मैं मिट्टी को बाहर निकालूंगी और उसके बीच में मैं ये नाली बनाऊंगी. एंड ऑल ऑफ दीज कॉन्वर्सेशंस वी वर एक्चुअली हैविंग ऑन व्हाट्सएप थ्रू द सेवा स्टाफ, because we've gone there, we met people, but 150 is a big number. And so there were, let's say, there was one person from the Seva team who was in touch with about 10 to 15 women. So this is the way that we were then in touch with the Seva staff over the last 6 to 8 months. And these creches are now developing, and very soon I will have pictures of how they look completed. So I wanted to go through this exercise with you all. They're very simple 9 steps. And at this point, I'm also going to ask for Varun's help to share a link to this brochure. It's also a PDF, which is available on our website. So you can also go through it now, or you can download it later. And it's like a palm book, just a handbook. It's a palm book, and it opens up with all 9 steps at the back. And at the front, you have a space to draw. So the idea is to draw a plan. सबने मिलके एक नक्शा बनाया, because नक्शा एक बहुत ही, it's a very useful tool to think spatially. And some tips, कुछ टिप्पणियाँ, and some do's and don'ts with regards to safety here. And so the 9 steps are as follows. The first thing that we asked everyone to think about is the size of the room, right? And then you realize it also how people think about size, and if they do measure, it's through inchy tape. वो सिलाई का जो इंची टेप होता है, measuring tape is a tool that architects I think tend to carry more, and many of them have a very good idea of the measurement कि दीदी ये 7 फीट है, ये 8 फीट है, और अगर नहीं भी है तो उसको एक बार नाप लो. So this is the first step. Can we draw the shape of the room? So यहाँ पे you can see they've drawn a rectangle. And we also see that minimum, अगर आपको क्रैश रन करना है तो मिनिमम 9 by 9 फीट तो चाहिए. अगर उससे कम हो गया तो शायद कुछ और सोचना पड़ेगा, जगह को बढ़ाना पड़ेगा, या फिर शायद वहां क्रैश नहीं रन कर सकते हैं. The second step is the most important, I think. सूरज कहाँ उगता है? सबसे ये पूछना जरूरी था कि where is east, where is north. अब आपकी अगर सनलाइट अंदर आती है, अगर बहुत गर्मी की जगह में आप रहते हो, तो अगर आपका साउथ फेसिंग विंडो है तो वो आपके लिए अच्छा है. एक छज्जा भी आपने बना दिया तो लाइट अंदर डायरेक्ट नहीं आएगी, बहुत गर्मी नहीं होगी, लेकिन सर्दी में बिल्कुल लाइट अंदर आएगी डायरेक्ट. तो सेकंड हमारा ये स्टेप हो जाता है कि खिड़कियां बनाओ. आपने कमरे का आकार बना लिया. नाउ लेट अस ड्रॉ द विंडोज. और अगर आपका वेस्ट फेसिंग, और यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा था कि जो औरतें हैं वो अपना खुद का क्रैश भी बना रही थी, तो वो खुद ही डिसाइड कर सकती हैं कि कहाँ विंडो निकालना है, कहाँ नहीं निकालना. अब आपका ऑलरेडी विंडो अगर फिक्स्ड है तो फिर उसको आप कैसे शेड कर सकते हो, कहाँ कर्टन लगा सकते हो, बाहर से कुछ आप बेल लटका सकते हो, या बांस से कोई शेड बना सकते हो. अगर वेस्ट फेसिंग है तो वहां से आपकी बहुत गर्मी आएगी, और अगर साउथ फेसिंग है तो अच्छा आपका वो डायरेक्शन है. नॉर्थ फेसिंग है तो कभी डायरेक्ट सनलाइट नहीं आएगी, वो अच्छा रहेगा गर्मी में. लेकिन सर्दी में, अगर सर्दी वाली जगह रहते हो तो साउथ या वेस्ट फेसिंग आपके लिए बहुत अच्छा हो जाता है. तो ये 3-4 टिप्पणियां दिमाग में रख के लोग आगे बढ़े. एंड एक चीज इसमें याद रखनी जरूरी है कि व्हाट इज आर्किटेक्चर, डिजाइन का क्या रोल है. जब भी मेरे को कोई पूछता है कि आप करते क्या हो, बिकॉज आई एम ट्रेन्ड एज एन आर्किटेक्ट, I simply say कि I help bring light and ventilation. हवा और लाइट, यही मेरा काम है, और यही सबसे जरूरी काम है डिजाइन और आर्किटेक्चर में. तो आप ये सोचें कि कहाँ से, मतलब क्रॉस वेंटिलेशन हो सकती है कि कहाँ से हवा आएगी और कहाँ से हवा जाएगी. अगर 2 ओपनिंग हो सकती है, 2 विंडो हो गए तो दैट्स द बेस्ट. अगर एक दरवाजा एक खिड़की हो गया तो वो तो मिनिमम चाहिए. और रोशनदान भी अगर आप क्रिएट कर सकते हैं देन दैट इज रियली गुड. सो नाउ द थर्ड थिंग इज आई थिंक वेरी कॉमन सेंस कि दरवाजा कहाँ है, एंट्री कहाँ से है। अब हम काफी बहनों के साथ जब काम कर रहे थे तो नॉट एवरीवन वाज कंफर्टेबल ड्राइंग विद हैंड because many of them haven't been able to go to school. So for them, holding a pencil, holding a pen was not very intuitive. तो हमने क्या किया कि स्टेंसिल बना दिए कि उसके आसपास ट्रेस करना थोड़ा आसान हो गया. So this is what these little stencils are. तो अब आपने दरवाजा अपना मार्क कर दिया, और अगर वहां पे आप बांस में या लकड़ी में, या फिर अगर ज्यादा बजट है, अगर मेटल में वेल्डिंग करवा के आप बनवा सके एक सेफ्टी डोर हो जाए बच्चों के लिए, सिर्फ 3 फीट की हाइट का, उसमें अगर आप ये बाला बीड्स भी डाल दें तो बहुत बढ़िया हो जाएगा. चौथा स्टेप, अब ये आपको देखना है कि कितने कोने बचे हैं. अब एक जगह का दरवाजा आ गया तो 3 कोने बच गए, कुछ और हो गया तो कम कोने बच गए. कोने बहुत अच्छे रहते हैं बच्चों की लर्निंग के लिए और उनकी डिफरेंट एक्टिविटीज के लिए. तो इसमें एक कोना तो मैंने आपको ऑलरेडी दिखाया था, और वो कोना है किताबों का कोना. सो यू हैव 4 कॉर्नर्स इन क्रेशेस. आपको चाहिए एक बुक कॉर्नर, एक आपको चाहिए ब्लॉक कॉर्नर जिसमें आपके पजल्स होते हैं, एक आपको चाहिए आर्ट कॉर्नर, और चौथा आपको चाहिए प्ले प्ले कॉर्नर. अब 4 कमरे तो आपके, सॉरी 4 कोने तो आपके निकलेंगे नहीं कमरे में. तो क्योंकि एक ना एक कहीं दरवाजा होगा, कुछ और होगा. तो मिनिमम अगर आपको 2 भी कोने मिल जाएं तो आई वुड से एक आपका किताबों का कोना हो गया और एक आपका प्ले स्पेस हो गया, जो बोलते हैं ना प्रिटेंड प्ले, प्ले कॉर्नर हो गया. उसमें आपका फिर ब्लॉक कॉर्नर भी हो सकता है, मतलब 2-3 चीजें एक साथ आ सकती हैं. और उस कोने में अगर आप एक ये मिरर लगा दें जो मैं बोल रही थी तो उससे बहुत फर्क पड़ेगा. और 1-2 चीजें आप और कर सकते हैं. अगर कोना है तो आप कर्टन्स लगा सकते हैं. एक होता है ना एक प्रिटेंड प्ले की बच्चों के खेलने के लिए घर घर ऐसी चीजें बना सकते हैं. हम क्या करते थे, 2 चेयर्स लगाते थे, उनके ऊपर बेडशीट लगा देते थे, तो एकदम से घर का घर घर वाला गेम बन जाता है. तो ऐसी सिंपल चीजों से आप एक प्ले कॉर्नर भी और उसको बेटर कर सकते हैं. टेक्निकल डिटेल देखिए तो ये जो बुक शेल्फ्स हैं इनका हाइट ऐसा होना चाहिए 1.5 फुट और 2.5 फुट, ये सब आपके ब्रोशर में है. बिकॉज यू वांट कि जो बहुत छोटे बच्चे हैं या उनसे ज़्यादा लंबे बच्चे हैं वो इन किताबों को रीच कर सकें, और मतलब 1 साल पहले जो नहीं रीच कर पा रहे थे अब वो 1 साल बाद शायद उसको भी रीच कर पाए. और फिफ्थ स्टेप आपका है स्टोरेज. तो ये आपके लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. यूजुअली सबसे ज़्यादा इशू इसी का आता है टीचर्स को क्रेशेस और आंगनवाड़ीज में, कि आपकी स्टोरेज स्पेस ज्यादा हो नहीं पाती. तो कहीं भी अगर आपकी जगह है तो आप देखें 2 खिड़कियों के बीच या कहाँ पे कोने में ना करें तो बेटर रहेगा, बिकॉज कोना आप एक्टिविटी के लिए रखिए. अगर लंबी दीवार है तो उसके बीच में एक स्टोरेज स्पेस आप फिक्स कर लें. या तो कोई अलमारी ला सके तो वो बेस्ट है, या फिर गत्तों से गत्तों को एक के ऊपर एक आप स्टैक अप कर सकते हैं. या फिर अगर आपके पास बजट ज्यादा है तो आप कारपेंटर से अलमारी बनवा सकते हैं. और शेल्फ आप रखिए अपनी हाइट पर थोड़ा ऊंचा, मतलब 5 फीट या 4.5 फीट. और बच्चों को जो आप चाहते हैं कि बच्चे खुद निकाल सके वो आप रखिए सिर्फ 3 फीट की हाइट तक. नेक्स्ट आता है आपका ब्लैक बोर्ड. ये आपके लिए जरूरी है कि आप बच्चों को काफी चीजें, कुछ सिंपल कॉन्सेप्ट्स आप उनको बता सकें. और उसके साथ है एक पिनअप बोर्ड. अब पिनअप बोर्ड थोड़ा फॉर्मल हो जाता है, क्लासरूम में कई बार होता है, लेकिन घरों में या फिर आंगनवाड़ियों में ज्यादातर लोग दीवार पे ही लगा लेते हैं चार्ट पेपर. तो ऐसी कोई जगह हो जाए कि जहाँ बच्चों का जो काम है उसको आप शोकेस कर सकें, उसको आप लगा सकें. उसके लिए जगह प्लीज आप थोड़ा डीमार्केट करके रखें. ये ब्लैक बोर्ड हो गया और आपका पिनअप बोर्ड हो गया. अब फाइनली बच्चों की जो हाइट है वहां पे भी आप ब्लैक बोर्ड देने की
Sorry,
कोशिश
Swati.
करें.
Just can you speak in English? I think because there are some
Oh,
audience
sorry.
for
Okay. I was
yes.
trying to be bilingual. Okay. So I'll just stick to English. So what I was saying is that when it comes to, what I was saying earlier is that it's very important that many elements, different elements are provided at a child height, which is less than 3 feet. So when it comes to the blackboard and a pin-up board, which is for the teacher, it should also be at the child height. So the kids can pin up their own artwork, their own creations, and also write on the wall. For a blackboard, what I've seen is, there's a very simple blackboard paint. It's about just 200, 300 rupees a liter. So you don't have to buy a blackboard. अगर स्लेट है तो अच्छी बात है, बट बड़े साइज, सॉरी, for a big size blackboard, it's usually expensive. So if you just get blackboard paint, you can paint it on the wall directly if it's made in brick with plaster on it, or you can paint it even on plywood, and that creates a blackboard immediately. Finally, what are the different pictures, different themes that you can think of for children? One of the first things we do is we ask people to draw a circle, an activity circle, bang in the center of the room. That's a very good idea for you to organize whenever you have a group activity with the children, and if it has primary colors in it, different colors in it, that becomes a great way of organizing space. And apart from that, can you think of other floor-based games, a simple hopscotch or zigzag lines? Those are things which can be drawn on the floor using paint. We have tried stickers, but they don't last very long. I think simple enamel paint is a good idea. And also drawing on the walls is a very good idea when you try to combine pedagogy with play. The last point here is the activity wall, which I was showing you from our project earlier. And the three elements in that are grooves, shapes, and tactile elements. And like I was saying before, that you can simply use embroidery hoops and keep changing the material, every few weeks. So these are very simple ways of creating a busy board, creating a tactile board. And at this point, I want to say that often what tends to happen in anganwadis and creches is also that they start getting very visually cluttered. I mean, I would really highly strongly suggest that also try to keep some areas which are a bit more neutral, especially for for neurodivergent children. What happens is, they get easily stimulated. So you really need a calm space where, and one of them or even two of them, whenever they want, they can just sit down and spend some time with themselves. So if you can also allocate a space like that, that would be really helpful. Yes, it's important to create stimulating surfaces, stimulating spaces, but I think we should also try to balance it with more neutral and calm spaces. Okay, so that was the first part of my presentation. And the second part is about what are the different approaches to creating creches, to creating anganwadis. So for the past few years, we have been working on different designs of anganwadis and creches for different contexts, using different building materials. And I'm going to show you a few examples. And as always, we use a lot of models made out of paper and cardboard to communicate these designs. The participatory process looks something like this. It's very similar to what we did in the beginning of the talk, where I was asking you all by a show of hands or reactions. So this is how people come together, and out of 2-3 options, we decide to go for one. So this project is something we built in 2 years ago. This was 2024 September. This was with a local NGO called Let's Educate Children in Need, and the Women and Child Development Department of Uttar Pradesh. The design we came up with, inspired by the design of a few classrooms we had seen in that area, was an octagonal design. And we realized that it's a very good idea to accommodate a lot of storage. And we ended up having a lot of corners in this design, as you can imagine. So this is what it looked like, and it was a modular structure. It can be dismantled if needed, because it's very difficult to get permission to build a permanent structure. There is very lengthy paperwork. You might know that as per the National Education Policy, anganwadis are being co-located in government schools, but they're not always enough classrooms. So building a standalone classroom like this in the government school campus then becomes a really easy way for the Women and Child Development Department to create more creches, to create more anganwadis in a very tight budget, in a very small budget. This is what the space looks like from inside. This is a rendered view. Again, you can see there is the child height and all the elements at that height below 3 feet. And then there is the adult height with lots of light and ventilation, as many windows as we could provide, and of course, pin-up board, blackboard. And here you can see the different corners here for the toys. We have different boxes which can be pulled out with wheels underneath. In terms of technical detail, the structure was built in a metal structure with 2 layers of walls and ceiling. So there was a false ceiling in plywood, and outside there was a metal sheet. And for the walls, we had a cement board outside and plywood inside. It's durable, it's earthquake resistant, it's definitely water resistant. And these are a few more views of the space inside. And you can see here the Bala grill. Here we created a special space for it, a dedicated space for it. I also wanted to show you behind the scenes. This time I don't have any construction photos. When I am, I think when I have a more architecture focused crowd, I think that's what we tend to share. But I wanted to share the nuts and bolts of the process of creating anganwadis and innovating in the design of anganwadis. And mostly it looks like this, where you find a champion officer, you want to find an ally in the ecosystem who shares the vision with you, and then becomes the flag bearer. It takes the design forward. So in our case, it was the DPO and the district magistrate in Noida. The participatory design process was at different levels. So at one level, it was with the government officials explaining the design to them. But at the most important level, it was directly with the teachers, who are the ones who are going to use the space and who know exactly what the space requires, and also the local NGO lesson. And it was also important for us to create this participation and thinking of what works, what doesn't work with the children themselves. But now with children, it's not as simple as asking them questions or having a conversation about it. It has to be done through activities, through different kinds of games. And so even here, children are designing their own anganwadis, I would say that, by using very simple elements like, these were like picture cards. And so many of them were choosing the same kind of picture cards. And of course, we could see that the play corner was the most popular, but there are also a few other insights that we gained, and I think many other things like I think there are different schools of thought about using furniture, using plastic furniture, or using furniture for children. But what we've also come to realize is that studying, sitting, playing on the ground is really the best form of development for children. We don't need expensive infrastructure. A simple dari is really, sometimes the best way to organize your floor space. So this is what the activities look like. And finally, the inauguration was done by the district magistrate. What we've also come to realize is that the inauguration is a key event when it comes to scaling up of the design, because who you invite at the inauguration is really important. And in this case, the district magistrate invited different CSR companies who could then scale up the design of the pilot. So there were people from HCL, people from Rotary Club. And as a result, 6 months later, the design was scaled up. It was discussed with the governor of Uttar Pradesh. Here you can see her, Srimati Anandiben, and we're discussing the design with her. And at that point, an MOU was signed for the design to be scaled up at 20 locations, 10 by HCL and 10 by Rotary Club. And finally, I am in the last part of my presentation. This one is going to talk about how we can create anganwadis even in off-grid areas that don't have access to electricity and sometimes even basic services, rural areas, or sometimes bang in the middle of our city. So in Delhi, right in the middle of the city along the river, there are farmers, and they've been farming there for decades. But at the same time, they are at a threat of eviction because of the riverfront development plan. At the same time, there are communities there and their children, and they don't have access to early childcare and education. And so it became important for us to create a small learning center with an anganwadi and a classroom for tuitions. And this is what it looked like. Because of a lot of community meetings I do, I tend to lose my voice, which is my occupational hazard. So here it was important for us to build a very light structure because permanent structure is not allowed here, and using natural local materials like bamboo, like river weed, which has been used on the top for insulation, and other materials that the farmers are already using for building the houses, like cement sheets. Here you can see we painted them white. And also the structure had to be flood resilient because it is close to the river, and every few years there's a flood. Now, because of climate change, there's a flood every year. And so the inside of the classroom will fill up till this level, in the sill level, which is the bottom of the window. And inside, we have used recycle wooden pallets. On the floor, which you can't see because of the dari, because of the mat, they're actually cow mats. We've used these rubber mats, which are called cow mats, which are used by farmers when their cows are pregnant and they need that soft surface for giving birth. And so we could get them at very affordable prices. And this is the team, human and non-human, who was responsible for building this Anganwadi. Just in a matter of between 2 to 3 weeks, we built it. And it is solar powered. So there is light, there's a fan in every classroom. And finally, this is my last slide, just to recap that what I have taken you through, and I might have taken a bit longer than I anticipated, but what I've taken you through are three different modes of engagement when it comes to creating Anganwadis. One is a direct sort of engagement with the local communities, like in the latest example that I shared. A second one is in collaboration with NGOs like Seva and Mobile Creches, which was a part of the creche we designed with the department in Delhi. And a third one is a direct partnership with the government department in the hope that the design will be picked up and scaled up. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Swati. That was, yeah, in 45 minutes, I think you did like a whole lot of and it also really inspired me and made me hopeful, because we are trying to do something here in Bhuj. And so to looking at it, especially in urban areas where Anganwadis don't have their own dedicated spaces, whether it's government allotted, a lot of them run from rented homes or temporary spaces. But your presentation sort of, there was something for each kind of structure where we can, even with even like very small things, you can have an impact. I'm going to open the floor now we have about 15 more minutes. So any questions? I know there was one question which I'm going to read out, Swati. And if any of you have any questions, please write it in the chat, and we'll try to see what all Swati can answer in the 15 minutes. But if there is some questions which are left unanswered, we will be sending you an email about Swati's contact, so you can reach out to her later. Okay, so this question is for, do they get any minimal financial aid to make these small retrofits? And if so, then does Seva facilitate funding for the same? I think it's a big funding question. So, yeah. And yeah, okay.
I can quickly answer that. There is financial aid in supporting them in buying the teaching material. So the different books and the different toys that they need to set up a creche. There was financial aid in that, but not in the the infrastructure of creating a creche as a room, designing the space, building the space. That is something the women had to organize on their own. Also because the creche would be a livelihood opportunity for them, that the children who are coming to the creche, would be paying a monthly fees. And so that is something, and that's why the budget was very, very low. And that's why you had to think of the most affordable, low cost ways that they could do it themselves. And they chose to do those things. Yes. Yeah. Self-driven. Yeah. It's a good sort of a partnership between the community and Seva.
Yes, so we have the next question. How long did it take to progress from ideation to implementation, as many stakeholders are involved in decision-making process?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Maybe I should have also put the dates in the presentation. I can tell you about the different projects. Also, I have to say, because we work with vulnerable, marginalized neighborhoods, often a lot of our projects also get delayed because of permissions, and sometimes they stretch on for years. But in this case, I'll start from the last one, the one that we built with the farmers. That was built very quickly. The design process did not take more than 2 weeks, because we have already gone through similar sort of conversations with similar group before, and also the window for building was very short, and then the building process itself took about 3 weeks. So just in about 5 to 6 weeks, that was done. But when it comes to the one which we did in the government campus, the octagonal design, that took 3 months for design and mobilization, like liaising with the local community, with the government officials, and then another month for building, and then another month, to mobilize inauguration. So I would say overall 6 months. And the yeah, I think the one that we did with Seva, that also there were a lot of delays, sometimes because of funding. I mean, that things get stopped, things get halted in the current ecosystem. But again, I would say overall it took about 3 months. So overall, these processes have taken 3 to 6 months. And we've had projects that have stretched on for 2 years because of delays and lack of permissions. But if everything is working well, 1 to 3 months is possible.
Swati, I have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
So in your experience of working on these different, where do you anticipate the major bottleneck? Like if a process delays, like is there a reason, like multiple different reason, or usually it's about like either funding or permissions, like what? And are there any, now working for so many years, are there any ways you're able to sort of work around that?
Yeah, I think when you're working with the government, there is a lot of bureaucratic lethargy, if I may. But at the same time, I think there are also, and that's why I was talking about the significance of finding those champion officers, finding those allies, and people with a vision who will drive it forward. Like in the case of Delhi, it was the Secretary of Women and Child Development Department. In the case of UP, it was a DPO, it was a district magistrate. So I think you need to find that person either at the level of the MLA or the councillor, or within the department. So I think those are the reasons that things get delayed, because of the official process and getting permissions, and then things don't happen for months and then they happen quickly overnight. So I think that's just the nature of the ecosystem. And the other reason there are delays is because when we're working with vulnerable communities that might be living in slums, which are considered encroachments at times, it can be a huge risk for them to build something, even though they really need a school or they really need an anganwadi. They need social infrastructure, but they might not always be able to build it with permission. And sometimes you have to work directly with people, and sometimes you're able to liaison with departments like in Delhi, the Delhi Urban Shelter Improvement Board, and sometimes you are working despite certain departments. So that's the complexity of this work.
No, I'm going to take the next question, which
Yeah.
is from Shaurya, who's working in one of the districts in Chhattisgarh. The government, when working on improving schools and AWCs in rural areas, they have a very contractor-centric mindset. How can we try and include organizations like yours and others in this space for better designs AWCs in rural areas?
Yeah, that's a very good question. वो बोलते हैं दुखती रग पे हाथ रख दिया. But I mean, just to say that, sorry, I keep slipping into Hindi. Really not being inclusive if it's a very national, audience. So yeah, I think Shaurya, that's a great question, and one of the biggest challenges for us is also bringing the value of design. Showcasing or bringing out the value of design, because we strongly believe that the design of a space, the spatial design, the quality of spatial design can have a huge impact on the quality of the service of the space. So here, the quality of education is directly impacted by the design of your classroom. And I think that you can only maybe prove, through pilots. They become your proofs of concept, and people who share your vision. So again, I'm going to say the same thing. It's very important, I think, the pitch you're making, the storytelling that you are doing, to find like-minded people who can resonate with that. And I think constantly, you keep at it. Your partnerships are the most important. The local NGOs, the national NGOs you're working with. So then you're not alone in it. It's an ecosystem. And I think there is a huge need for design thinking in governance. And I think also creating a collaborative space where all of us who are working for better creches, better anganwadis, are seen as collaborators.
Nishita is asking about your journey and what made you like take it on. But I think we should take it. That can be the last question you
The end.
answer.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna ask you, I mean, what Aditya Joshi is
Aditya,
asking
yeah.
about. Many Anganwadis run from tiny rooms with little ventilation and sunlight, leave alone space for children to play and learn. Would you have any inputs or ideas on making most of such spaces?
Yeah, I think this is the most important, and again, the biggest challenge, spatially speaking, especially if you are in a basti, you have just one window, and on that you have to have a cooler because it's so hot, right? A desert cooler, and then you block out any other sort of natural light or ventilation. So I would say, if you can, if you have any budget for infrastructure, I would say make the window bigger. If you can create another window, if you can create ventilators, I think that's the most important thing. If you're not sandwiched between homes, if there's any way you can create more openings in the classroom, that is really the most important. If you can't, then I think, yeah, artificial lighting is perhaps the only way. But yeah, I think that's a very challenging space for children to learn in. So I would say try and create more openings if possible.
There's another interesting question. I'm sorry, I'm going to skip one. But I think this is from design perspective, what type of materials one must avoid to build a low-cost structure to make it safe and vandalism proof?
What must avoid to build a low-cost
Yeah.
structure?
I mean, what kind one must avoid to build a low cost to make it safe and vandalism proof?
One must avoid.
Yeah.
Avoid expensive materials, I guess. I think avoid materials which are, I mean, try to use more natural materials. I would say, like, bamboo is a great material for building in. Cardboard. I think a lot of things that I showed you with the shapes, a lot of those things can be done in cardboard. Stitching, weaving. A lot of women we work with, I think it's also important to understand what comes intuitively to people, what crafts can they bring, what skills can they bring. So I would say, instead of what to avoid, I would talk about what to use. Otherwise, in terms of avoiding, I would just say in terms of safety, you want to avoid. I mean, sharp corners. I can't think of materials to avoid except for expensive ones. I don't know if I answered that question correctly. What to avoid?
No,
Avoid
I think
asbestos
maybe,
sheets.
yeah, that's what I was coming to. Like maybe, is there any hazardous material that we should
So many hazardous material. I mean, definitely asbestos, and I think several carcinogenic. I think materials and practices are there. When it comes to using rubber tires, for low cost material, for low cost, I think designs many times they use rubber tire, but there is also a process that you need to treat the rubber tires, especially if the kids are going to using them directly. So that's something we forget. Many times people talk about using shipping containers as if it's very like, easy, like low cost option, but they also have carcinogenic elements in them. And so there's a lot of treatment that needs to be done to shipping containers. So yeah, I think sometimes we have very attractive solutions, but if you start looking at it from a safety point of view, then you realize that they're actually not as low cost as you initially thought they were. I hope this answers the question.
Um, uh, uh, Swati, there are a few questions I think which were, I mean, I'm just going to combine because people are asking if do you also work with like, there is a question from somebody from Sira Collective was saying that how do you ensure the software of Anganwadis to truly make the children school ready and life ready, which in the brackets they've written Anganwadi teacher training. So are those
Yes,
things,
yes.
yeah, that you do work with?
So these are very good questions. I'll try to answer all of them quickly in the next 2 minutes. You cannot do everything yourself, and that is why you collaborate. So it's very important to find the right partners who bring those skills. So in every project of ours, we've had a local NGO that is working on pedagogy that is also embedded in the community. So I think teacher training is a very important part of building better Anganwadi. So spatial design can only do so much, and you do need to augment it with also innovation in pedagogy and other fields. What else?
We also have somebody who's an Anganwadi worker who is in those who's asking, what are some invisible rules in an Anganwadi environment that we should notice and change to make children feel more respected, independent, and included?
I think creating more independent spaces, like spaces of self-learning, so that everything is not spoon-fed to them. I think that's very important. I think then this is also a pedagogy-based question, like teacher training is very important for sensitization, for them to also identify if a kid is struggling with some issues, if the kid is crying a lot or is too quiet, what's the reason behind that? So I think that comes more from the point of view of teacher training and child psychology. But I think as a spatial designer, I would say if you can create flexible spaces, if you can create spaces that give options to children, if you want to sit in a group or if you want to sit by yourself, right? If it's too noisy, is there a quiet space? Or is there a stimulating space? The more options and more multifunctional spaces you can create, I think that's maybe the best way. But all the answers are not through design and architecture, for sure.
Thank you, Swati. I think that's a very good point. Like to also end this, that there are some answers we can find in architecture and design, but and I think what you speak about, and often as architects and designers we don't do, is like working in an ecosystem, finding those champions, finding partner organizations. So that brings us to the end of this masterclass. We will be sharing Swati's details, and if any of you want to collaborate with her, reach out to her. You can definitely do that. Thank you so much, Swati. Like just one last statement from you before we close.
I think thanks to everyone. It's so good to have this Q&A. I wish I'd spoken less and had more time for discussions. I would just like to say we have an open source section on our website, which has a lot of resources which you might find helpful, especially when it comes to disability inclusion. We're going to be putting more design elements over the next few months. I hope to see some of you in this space in the coming months or years. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a good evening.
Thank you. That was lovely.
मुल की हंसदी बोना से काठों मा होया कतगा रोते लोच मेरो गाँव मा होया माठू माठू आई ब्याखोनी पाख्यों मा होया माझी बाटू हिरणी चटिएगी डेरा मा मुल मुल के हंस दे हो पूना से काठियों मा हो कथगारों ते लूचा
हंसते खेलते सीखने दो, बच्चे हैं, बचपन मनाने दो।